Okay, I'd like to ask everybody to take a seat. Yes, if you'd like to. And you can stand if you want to, but we thought you might want to sit.
Yeah, the hot seat, right?
Or you could even sit down there.
Have legs, can travel. That's my motto.
So I've been informed there's a long line at the barista stand, so we're going to open that wall and hopefully they will quiet down so we can hear, and if they want to hear, they can. So I would like to see, waiting for Suzanne. Oh, there you are. Where are you? Okay, Tara will go get it. So what we're going to do, we're going to take half an hour, and the questions that we've received in writing are in a can, and I've asked Tara, as the head of our, kind of a lay leader, head of our Spirit and Action Council, to be the one to ask the questions. And Reverend Bonnie is welcome to respond to them in any way she wishes. So, so the can is on its way into us as we speak. And so we are going to affirm that I don't know how many questions are in there, so if there are more than we can handle in half an hour, we are going to affirm that they are, that the ones we ask are spirit guided.
It's like a raffle. Let's see who the winner will be. Okay. So the first question starts with a statement. In my experience, the energy of the word God and goddess are very different. Please comment on your views of using female pronouns or nouns to refer to the sacred.
All right. So my studies were through the Center for Spiritual Living, and that was founded by Dr. Ernest Holmes, and he called God the thing itself. And I love that because it gave me permission to use whatever words that I feel inspired to use within when I speak of the divine. I heard a talk by Dr. Shelby Spong, the great Episcopal theologian, years ago. And when he was asked about gender issues, he said that he studied genders in nature and learned that there were something like 22 genders in worms. And I went online a couple months ago and looked up really the number of genders in nature, and there are far more than masculine and feminine. So during my spiritual journey, there was a time where it was really important for me to use the word goddess because it helped me own my divine feminine, and it had a certain energy to it. And then where I sit today, that question is, I don't have curiosity around that question active right now. So what I'm aware of is God is all there is. I've had direct experiences of that knowing. God, the substance behind all form, to me is without gender and shows up as gender. And like I said, in nature, there's far more than two. So I don't know if I answered that question, but that's kind of where I am in referring to God. I don't know who asked that. Was there any more?
Bonnie, there's a little bit of a follow-up, kind of a similar. On Mother's Day, Goddess was honored instead of God 9 times in the prayer for protection. How would you feel if this change was made permanent for a few years? Her turn. And for for divine oneness, the eternal one and all. So what do you think about the idea of replacing with from God to goddess?
I have no attachment to that at all. At all. I mean, we could, I just don't.
Mm-hmm.
So.
It's a neutral thing for you.
It's so neutral because to me, the field, I think of God as all there is, and to me, it's a field of consciousness that has different levels, and with the different levels has different vibrations. And so, to me, it is without gender. And so the words that we use are really important at different times in our journey, and it's really necessary that we honor those, and at other times it just isn't. So what I'm hearing is a request to use more than one form of referencing God, and I think that would be appropriate.
Thank you. The next question is, what are you looking forward to the most about being here?
Well,
Other than your grandkids.
what many of you know is that I did not want to be a minister here or anywhere again. And I was done with the ministry, and I had a beautiful conversation with Jeff Tawney, who had taken me out for coffee. And he asked me if I could have a ministry in the way that I loved, and that, how did he word it? He said, what if you look at what you don't like about the ministry instead about what you love, and what if you could have that here? And we could all support you in being your highest while we are ours. And my heart just opened, and I had a shift. I told Jeff that, and that's why a lot of times on Sundays when he gets up here and he says, I'm so choked up, it's because he was really the impetus conversation, and I'm very aware if we had not had that and Jim had approached me to apply, I would have said no. So the way it unfolded was so magical, and my thing, as you guys have probably been able to tell, is I absolutely believe firmly in spiritual practice, and that the practice in community is magnified and powerful. And that literally, and I mean this literally, although, is that the more we glow, the more this space will glow, and that people literally will find us. Because there's something happening here that is spectacular, and that is grounded in spiritual practice. And so my experience has been in a lot of communities that is not the focus, and that there's a lot of kind of drama and frenetic energy and positioning, and I just don't have an interest in being a part of that. And what Jeff told me is that we could co-create something that wasn't that. And that has huge interest to me. And so he opened my heart in that conversation. I started thinking bigger and different. I have met many of you and had meals at several of your homes, and I love you guys. So, darn it, those tears are happening again. And so it's really hard to say no to love. It just is.
Strong pull.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. How will you support our mission-centric focus and not move us back to the minister-centric focus? So that's the first part.
Yeah.
Let's start there.
So what is attractive about the mission center focus is that I'm not the focus. And that's really attractive, that we're here to co-create something spectacular, that we're guided to co-create. And what I learned from my interview with the board is that there could be a real strengthening in systems to support the mission-centric. And so part of, so I would support it by looking at the systems that exist right now in order to turn our attention toward God, Goddess, and where they're turned to personality, I will look at ways that the system can be tweaked to make it stronger. So I watched all of the videos that were done by Gary, and they were spectacular. And he mentioned a whole bunch of systems that were in place, and when I asked the board, they're not in place. And so I would like to have a conversation with Gary at some point to see what his idea has been and his understanding of a system. And then I've worked with in organizations and systems my whole career, so I, along with others, can contribute to just strengthening that. So that was one of the appeals to applying.
I am new to Unity. What book do you recommend I read first?
Whose question is that?
They may not have stayed.
Not, it wasn't yours?
No way.
Oh, jeez.
David.
That is stuffing the ballot box,
Yes.
David. Because really, if it was someone new, I'd ask them what they were struggling with to give them a recommendation. But I love the atom smashing power of, what's the last word? Thought? Of the mind. Yeah, I love that book. So for a Unity book, that's good. There's some in the bookstore. One of my very, very favorite books, and one of the things that, one of the questions I was asked by the board is what would my transition look like? And I went home and designed a transition plan to share with Joan next week. And in it, I had down that after I'd been here for 9 months, we'd start a book club. And maybe it would happen sooner if someone else felt compelled, but in the time frame and flow. And the first one I wanted to start with was Spiritual Economics. I love that book. I've read it more times than you can imagine. It's by Eric Butterworth. And given that there's a lot of talk in our culture right now about recession and all of that, I just think that would be a really powerful book to study.
Thank you. Wonderful. What are your most meaningful ways to show love in your life?
Ugh. What are the most meaningful ways? Is that to other people or to me or to?
However you interpret that.
However. Attention is really important. Where you give your attention is where love flows. So I think attention is, and that includes listening, understanding, connection, heart opening.
Will you be able to integrate Unity teaching along with your own training? And would you just say a sentence or two about what your background is? I'm guessing science of mind. Yeah. So thoughts about that?
So I called 5 of my colleagues who were religious science and now are Unity, and I asked them about the transition. And one of them, Reverend Susie from Sarasota, said that that question came up during the congregational question. And so for the first 6 months of being a new minister, she would read a Fillmore quote and then an Ernest Holmes quote and say, now you tell me who said it. And you couldn't tell the difference. So the way that I explain the evolution or the flow of, or the difference, or however you want to word it, is that they shared the same teacher, Emma Curtis Hopkins, who's one of my favorites. In fact, the book I wrote, A Year of Good God, is all based on Emma Curtis Hopkins' scientific spiritual mental practice book. And I have found that I could give a whole talk off of just one sentence she wrote. It's that powerful. So what I did is I went through her entire book and picked out 365 excerpts and then expounded on them. So for a daily, that's a daily book. And she was both gentlemen's teachers, and we need to include Myrtle in there, but she was their teachers. And so the way I explain it is that Ernest came like 20 or 30 years after the Fillmores. And so if you look at the culture, the time that the Fillmores came to have metaphysical Christianity was really progressive. And Ernest came decades enough later. He was Emma's last student. He came later enough that by then our culture had received a whole bunch of other Eastern religion information. And so how he differentiated it, in my opinion, that I don't have any proof behind this, but the way I understand it, how he differentiated it was that he said, let's include all religions in this, not just Christianity. So they're both metaphysical. It's that, and the Fillmores studied with and honored other religions, but the teaching is Christian, where the science of mind is broader. But when you read Dr. Holmes' work, it is just filled with the Bible. So it's kind of, and they're so much alike that it's amazing. That's my experience.
I started at a center for spiritual living and then came to Unity. So
Yeah.
we
That
gotta have
happens a
coffee.
lot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Okay. What would be your role with visitations, coordinating a visitation team? So visiting members and congregants.
Well, we talked about that in the interview. And the 3 things that I would love to do, and what came out when I talked to Jeff, is I'd like to preach, I'd like to teach, and I would like to be out in the community. I have an extensive history with education and with entrepreneurialism and business. And so there's a lot of places that I can meet and make connection, and the board was particularly interested in diverse and other kind of community. So I would have that be part of the intent. I am really good and enjoy visitations. I am really, really, really good at spiritual directorship and have done it as my sole business for the last while. I am really good at a lot of things, but I can't do it all. So I understand that there are chaplains who do visitations, and I would say they should do the visitations. So back to mission-centric, where I'm really good would be speaking, teaching, and being out in the community.
Okay, thank you.
And I apologize in advance because I love visitations, but if I'm doing visitations, then I'm not doing one or the other.
Right, the priorities of your gifts. Okay. Let's see. I think I'll rephrase this one. The bridge between the Center for Spiritual or Science of Mind and Unity, are there unity trainings that you're interested in getting for yourself?
I will be, it will be part of the process that I'm told what I need to do in order to make that bridge. And I'll do it, so.
Great. Okay, and then finally, which I think is really, this is the last one in the bucket, then it's an open floor, so.
What?
Yes,
Ah.
I know. So this is great because this is the next generation. Please share your views on youth education and ways to improve it.
You guys, I'm so good with my grandkids, but I really teach adults, so I have not given that a lot of thought. I know there's youth experts here that are off the chart amazing, so I would confer with them and see how I could support and be helpful. There's still more I need to learn about the unity structure and the roles. And it's my understanding that there's a lot of international youth things, and I'm not sure how that fits into the local, and there's just, I need to learn more in that area to make a comment. So whoever's question that was, I'm sorry, it's kind of an inadequate answer.
It just sounds like an honest answer where you're at right now. Yeah. Okay, raise your hand if you have a question you'd like to add or a follow-up to one of the ones that you already heard. We have 6 minutes. Or keeping on track. Jim, and I'm going to have you speak into the microphone so everyone can hear your question.
Let me see here. Yeah. So, really, a very important question. Are you a Zag fan?
So I have a group of girlfriends I've been friends with since we were in elementary school, since we were 5 years old. And one of them lives in Meade. And when I moved here, her and her husband, were so excited. They were helping with the process. And he said, the first gift we're buying you is a Gonzaga t-shirt.
Awesome.
So not yet, but I will be.
All right. Excellent. Who else? What else? Coming. Donna?
Mine isn't really a question. It's more of a thought when you were mentioning, gee, I'm going to research into this, or I need to do this. And I thought, you can be the most enlightened person in an area, and that's for all of us. And yet when you step into something new, a new area that you've got background, it's still in two, we're all new. And for you, I want to say thank you. I'm so pleased that you're here, and it's just absolutely normal to not know all the answers, and it's getting acquainted for all of us. So I just let you be here.
Thank you.
And one of my girlfriends, right? All girls are girlfriends. We just know some better than others, right?
Yeah.
That's the same. That goes for guys too, But all right.
Coming. Yeah, Dora.
Good morning.
Morning.
You talked about when we glow together, that attracts more. And being out in the community. And I'm assuming you're meaning to be out in the community with non-unity people to attract more. And I'm wondering, how do you envision doing that? And do you have a figure in mind, a percentage in mind of how the church would grow?
That was a whole bunch of questions in one, even though it was just one question, because there was the church growth and so it said in my transition plan, which I've not yet shared with Joan, that first of all, I'd spend the first 3 months getting to know all of you guys better, so I'd getting to know the community, and then looking at where would make the most sense in the community for me to show up. So some ideas that I've had, which may not come to fruition, but some initial ideas were to once a month teach meditation in a hospital, or many of them, so that as people are healing, they have access to some of the technology that we have here, and then they can meet me at a time that they're vulnerable and desirous of exploration. And then when they're complete, they may choose to come here, and they may choose not to, but then more people in the community know about us. Another thought were the college campuses. I have a lot of friends with kids in their 20s, or young folks in their 20s, and they travel the entire world to learn how to meditate. It is a big deal. And so it's one thing to advertise that we provide meditation here. It's another thing to provide a sampling for people in their own environment and then have them desirous of coming here. One of the suggestions that I made on the transition form was, or the transition plan, was that starting January 1st, and I understand you've done this before, but going back to having meditation prior to service. So that there's some people who may want to just do meditation and not service, or do both. So, so those were some of the initial ideas I had about being out in the community. My plan would be to join the Interfaith Council and get to know my colleagues, so that we would be able to invite other really awake and grounded and lovely human beings into our space, and so they could get to know us and we could learn from them. And then I just have a big part of my ministry has been working with entrepreneurs, because I love them. I love the creative energy. And so in previous organizations, I have had groups of business people, and we've called it like God is my CEO. We've had really fun little names for it, but coming together and using principle and growing businesses and clarifying directions and all kinds of stuff. So I don't know where Spirit will guide me, and I don't know what, I don't know the hot spots in Spokane where it would make sense to fish. So that would come after I'd been here a little while, after the holidays for sure. And I would be available to speak in the community around the holidays, teaching stress reduction or, whatever, and be able to have the conversation about connecting with the self and the soul. So.
Thank you very much, Reverend Bonnie. And thank you, everyone, for your questions. We're out of time, but does anyone need a feedback form? Because even though we're out of time for questions, you can provide feedback on the form. You can do it online, or you can do it here in person. Everybody have a form? Okay, looks like they're ready. Thanks again.
Thank you.